CNN, I'm Mary Tarvey. In today's broadcast showcases Henry VIII and all his wives. In other news, we have a review on Renaissance art, and also in studio we have Cosimo de' Medici talking on how the Medici family kept its power. And later we have a debate on whether the scientific method is important or not.
Hello, this is Pressville, bringing you information about Martin Luther and the Reformation this time. Martin Luther has come to be known as one of the focal figures in the Protestant Reformation. He continually bashed with the Catholic Church, varying different beliefs. The story of how Martin Luther became a friar is quite interesting. When he was 19, Luther joined in law school, but dropped out shortly after to study theology. It was a very bad storm outside of the university. A lightning bolt struck in front of Luther's horse, and he said, "Help me, St. Anna, and I will become a monk." He immediately left school and joined a friary. He soon was ordained a priest. Martin Luther became discouraged with the church for promising forgiveness of sin by payment, causing him to write his own 95 theses in different translations. He disagreed with a lot of things the Catholic Church believed, like priests staying unmarried, and he didn't believe in purgatory. Martin Luther denounced the Pope, calling him a tyrant. Martin Luther's writings really cemented the Reformation. He believed in justification of faith alone. Luther's work spread widely across Europe. Most of his writings were very controversial. Soon, Pope Leo X excommunicated him in 1521, calling him an outlaw. He was ordered to appear in front of the council, but he refused. Soon after, all of his literature became banned. He spent most of his later years in a different part of Germany, writing and fathering children into a nun. That's all the information we have for now. See you next time.
Next on CNN, we have the Grim Reaper and Donnell talking about Henry VIII.
This is Donnell Hall reporting with the Grim Reaper, reporting on the life and wives of Henry VIII. King Henry was originally named Henry Tudor.
Wasn't he born in 1491 and ended up having 6 kids?
Yeah, he did, but only 3 of them survived.
Did you know that during his early life, his father offered him to Spain to affirm the family alliance?
No, I didn't know that.
Then you need to get up on your research. But the Pope conceded the marriage of Henry and Catherine.
King Henry was witty as a kid and highly educated, taught by private tutors for his entire upbringing.
He loved to listen to music and he wrote songs as well.
On February 18, 1516, King Henry was divorced from Catherine.
Now, I believe everyone knows that King Henry liked more than one woman at a time because he ended up having 6 wives.
That's not completely true. King Henry was annulled to 4 of those 6 wives.
So that means that he wasn't actually married to her?
Yeah, that's right. So technically, he was only married to 2 wives.
That's a shame to be going around spending money and stuff like that on someone when you're not even married yet. Did King Henry know that they were actually annulled before they were married?
Yeah, he knew, but it turns out he made the marriage be annulled so that he could divorce the woman.
Yes, he's smarter than he looks. But there wasn't a divorce option in this time like there is today.
But if he could have done that to divorce all his wives, would he do that?
Man, I don't know. I'm dead. But I can't travel backwards in time. That's a good question considering that he had 2 of his wives beheaded.
Okay, but does anyone know why he had the 2 wives beheaded?
No, I don't think anyone knows why he did it, but did you know that the 2 wives who were beheaded were actually first cousins?
Talk about keeping it in the family tradition.
Whoa. What's that supposed to mean?
Nothing, it's just dope.
Alright.
Did you know that one of his wives died hours after giving birth to his child?
Of course I knew that. Do you know what year I was born?
You know what, you can ask the questions then instead.
My question is, how come one of the women is just killing from something?
I don't know, but I would have real fast.
Yeah, you're right.
By the way, how did you die?
I suggest you shut up before I bring people with you.
Next on CNN, we have alchemy and how it came about. Reporting on that, we have Jacob Zekiel. The scientific revolution was a time when medicine flourished and shaped the advances we made nowadays. Jacob Zekiel has the story.
In 1517, Reformation ideals formed in Germany. Because of this, rebellions rose and caused much havoc. Luther, a main contributor to the Reformation, wanted specifically a German rebellion. Germany quickly responded to that call. The Knights in the Rhineland were the first to rebel. They were suffering economically. They were suppressed quickly, though. Those knights caused an uproar that spread throughout Germany. Then many other rebellions were triggered. In 1525, the rebellions were annihilated. In the later 1520s, Luther's ideas started to spread, this time in a more peaceful way.
Next on CNN, we have Alex Nagel reporting on Martin Luther.
In the 1500s, Christianity was the most populated region like it is now. But only one denomination of Christianity existed, Catholic. The Catholic version of Christianity involves practices, teachings, and self-indulgence that people like Martin Luther did not like. A few of these things were purgatory, the deprivation to marry, many sacraments, the authority of the Pope, etc. All of these things were not needed in Christianity, believed by some people during the time period. Martin Luther played a significant role during this time period because he stood up to the church and questioned them. He eventually wrote works to create this denomination of Lutheran Christian. Erasmus translated the New Testament into Greek Latin. It was the primary text. For the German translation and English translation in later years, Erasmus's relationship with Luther consisted of the expression of the need for a sound and reasonable Christianity. The official time Lutheranism began was in 1517. Some differences between Protestant and Catholic Christianity was that Catholic services should always be in Latin, but Protestants held service in native languages, so anyone should be able to listen and understand Christianity. Catholics thought priests were the link between God and the people, and the Pope was ordained by God. These people were to not marry in their life. Protestants believed God could find God without a priest or pope, and ministers were ordinary people who could marry. The Reformation eventually spread, and Lutheranism became the dominating version of Christianity in Northern Europe.
Next on we have RJ French interviewing priest, author, and famous figure of the Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther.
Hello, I'm RJ French. Today we will be interviewing Martin Luther.
Hello, I'm Martin Luther. I am an author and a priest.
Where are you from?
I am from Eiselbahn, Germany.
Why did you hate the way the churches were ran?
The churches were nice and pretty, but the only reason why was because their Christians were paying money to be saved. All of that only went to getting stained glass for the windows and sculptures. The people weren't understanding going to heaven was for being nice and for helping people and not doing bad things to others. If people want to get into heaven, they should pay money to the church. That would get them into heaven, even though Christianity is about giving up close things so you can be close to God.
Why didn't you like the Jews?
I thought they were going to be on board with my new view of Christianity, but they were not. So that's why I disliked them.
Well, that's all, folks. Have a nice day.
Theater was very important in the culture of the Renaissance. To tell you about it, we have Mateo Alvarez.
Hello, I'm Mateo Alvarez, and this is CNN News. Today we are going to talk about the main concept of the Renaissance, which began around the 15th century in northern Italy. The Renaissance is a French word that literally means rebirth. It was a time of new ideas, a new way of learning, the cause of these new ideas, and the interest in learning, because all the books in this time were written in Latin. Only the priests and highly educated people could understand Latin. Also, only the priests had access to these books. It was also illegal to copy these books into their own language, English, Italian, and other language. In 1423, Europe started printing books. Soon they started printing all the things they found interesting, such as plays, poems, mathematics, textbooks, Christian stories, and even animals. Before 1423, all this information and knowledge belonged to the priests. Now it belongs to thousands of people. In ancient Rome, people started studying the remaining sculptures and digging up ancient pieces of pottery that they could stick together, probably the first archaeologists of this time. To scholars, this was a time of classical learning and wisdom after a long time of cultural decline. As in Europe, they started forming states, building banks, and starting classical scholarships. Your identity becoming based off of where you grew up, your class, family, and your occupation. Everything was becoming modern, the way of living and learning. I mean, you had people like Shakespeare, Galileo, and Leonardo da Vinci, or the Renaissance man. Men with many talents, they played a major part in the Renaissance. All this information and knowledge we learned from this time led to the scientific revolution, which also led to the industrial revolution. So viewers, I want to say that learning is what made our country, so study hard and you might change the world. Like the famous Renaissance man said, it had long since come to my attention that people of accomplishment rarely sat back and let things happen to them. They went out and happened to things. Leonardo da Vinci. Have a good day.
Right now we are going to be talking about the music of the Renaissance. Music was important during this time. It was known as the golden age of a cappella. As we all know from earlier, the Renaissance was a time of rebirth of learning, science, and the arts. Music in this era was greatly influenced by the Burgundian court. Guillaume Dufay was part of the influence. Dufay was very important. Oftentimes, people may use the expression word painting during this time of music. This was because they wanted their music to be a musical representation of poetic images. Music was an essential part of country, civic, and religious life. Due to the great interchange in Europe during 1400 through 1600, led to major changes in many different styles of not only composing and methods of disseminating music, but also new musical genres in the development of musical instruments. There are many different types of instruments that are still used now. A couple of the most common are the bagpipes, harp, lute, bladder pipe, and the recorder. Instruments were an important part during this time, along with the music that the instruments played and created. Not only was there the instruments, but the actual music. There was the most important type, composed for use by churches. This type of music was called polyphonic. Polyphonic was made up of several simultaneous melodies, which was very harmonizing and peaceful to the people. Although there are many different music composers from all over the world, there were three main different types of music. These were madrigals, acapellas, and secular music. Madrigals are music that were performed by a group with more than 3 people. Madrigals were mainly love songs. Acapella were performed with no instruments at all. It was all created with their mouths. Secular music was a type of non-religious music. Although there are so much more to talk about music during the Renaissance. This is all we have for you today. Thank you.
What is a Renaissance man? To answer that question, we have Haley Jackson talking about Leonardo da Vinci, the true Renaissance man.
Hi, my name is Haley Jackson with CNN News, and we are here today to talk about the one and only Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci was born on April 15, 1452. He was a traveler that worked for a number of different patrons. Also, he is considered to be a true Renaissance man. Da Vinci is known to the world as an inventor, scientist, mathematician, and most of all, an artist. He was skilled in many subjects and is respected because of his achievements. His life and work reflected in the popular humanist ideals that shaped the Renaissance era. In many ways, Leonardo da Vinci reflects the fundamental components of the Renaissance, as his interests span the fields of art, architecture, music, science, mathematics, anatomy, geology, and botany. At an early age of 14, Leonardo da Vinci moved to Florence, where he trained with the painter and sculptor Verrocchio. Da Vinci's capacity for brilliance was obvious even at this early stage in his life. He often experimented with different artistic forms and techniques. In the Italian art environment, he was in the lead of using oil and paints. His work started a new style of art in Italy. In addition to his great work as an artist, Da Vinci's drawings, his inspiration from the natural world, attempted to create works of science and engineering. His methods involved an emphasis of an observation on detail as opposed to theory, which was the traditional approach to science during this period. He produced a large number of studies and depictions of plants and animals. The term Renaissance man is used for a very clever person who is good at many different things. A Renaissance man is one that is well-rounded. They do not simply have one talent or ability, they are capable of just about everything. Leonardo fits the definition very well and influenced much of the art in the Renaissance era. He spent his final years in the employ of King of France. Leonardo da Vinci died on May 2nd, 1519. His life is lived on and is still much appreciated to this day. Thank you for joining us on CNN News. Have a good day.
Art, just like theater, was a crucial aspect of the Renaissance. Now talking about the most amazing paintings and sculptures we have TJ Conley.
Hello, my name is Thomas Conley Jr., but you can just call me TJ. Today I will be talking about and critiquing famous paintings and sculptures in the Renaissance in Europe. The Renaissance was known for a lot of things, but something that was famous in the Renaissance was the art. There are very good paintings and many great painters. Today I will be focusing on arguably the 3 most iconic paintings in the Renaissance, and maybe even of all time. This painting is called Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa may be the greatest painting ever. The great Leonardo da Vinci painted this self-portrait. The woman in the portrait is Lisa Gherardini Giocondo. The Mona Lisa was painted in 1503 through 1517. It took 14 years to paint this. I love this painting because it shows various colors and the background is very detailed. Although I don't really like the drowsy smile, I rate this a 9 out of 10. The Last Supper was also made by the great Leonardo da Vinci. This painting was made in 1495 to 1498. This painting shows the Last Supper of Jesus with his disciples before his crucifixion. It's not very original, but it's a classic. I do like how they made all disciples look at Christ, showing the sacredness of Jesus. They used a lot of green, red, blue, and brown. I rate this an 8 out of 10. The last piece of art I'm reviewing is actually the sculpture of David from the Bible. This sculpture is called David by Michelangelo. Michelangelo is arguably the second best artist from the Renaissance behind Leonardo da Vinci, in my opinion. It was made from 1501 to 1504. It is a marble statue. This sculpture to me is brilliant. This is located at the Galleria dell'Accademia in Florence. The statue of David is my favorite piece of art from this time. This sculpture had to take lots of patience and time. This sculpture looks like a Roman god to me. I rate this piece of art a 10 out of 10. Thank you for your time. See you next time on CNN News.
The de' Medici family was one of the most powerful during the Renaissance. To talk about that power, we have Cosimo de' Medici being interviewed by Devin Hayton.
Hello to everyone watching. Here today we have Cosimo de' Medici from the Medici family.
Hello to everyone watching as well, but maybe we can conclude this time. Let's go back to watch the bank.
Yes, sorry about that. So how exactly did your family gain power?
We gained our power in the beginning of the 14th century with the power of Giovanni de' Medici.
Oh, so is he a big deal to the family?
Yes, he is the one who started the banking.
So when he died, who took his place?
The first Cosimo de' Medici.
So tell me a little bit about him.
He was very successful. He was named prior of the Republic and later acted as ambassador.
So, Cosmo, how did you come up to also be a banker?
Well, I liked money and I wanted to keep it in the family.
So how many banks does your family own as of this point?
Well, as of right now, we own 3.
Wow, it must be a big target for the opponents then.
Yes, but we overcame that and rose to power and the wealth to bring back why I wanted to be a banker, to make sure the wealth was stable.
Wow, absolutely amazing to be a big target to carry on and keep the family going onwards. Now,
You guys are at the top. How are you staying there, and how are you dealing with the banks at the moment?
We are doing good. We are fighting our wars and winning while we banks are doing just fine. As well, bringing in more money by the day.
Now, over some research, and as you open the third bank, you made some mistakes loaning money to the Germans.
Yes, big mistake. I didn't talk to my father about who I should loan money to.
Now, did this hurt you at all?
At the time, yes, because we were still rising as a powerful family, but now that we are stable, it is just a setback.
Absolutely crazy, but I heard that you yourself are worth $30 million or 15,000 or 150,000 florences.
Is that so? I don't keep track, but it's always nice to know.
Thank you for joining me on CNN News again. This is Mateo. We are talking about the English drama during the Renaissance. English Renaissance drama didn't start until the 16th century and the first half of the 17th century in England. It is also referred to as a Elizabethan drama because most of the development occurred when she was Queen of England. In 1576, the first permanent theater was built also in England. However, before 1576, plays were acted in public halls, large houses, and inns. Playwrights worked in tragedy and comedy. Soon they started writing plays about the old English kings. Shakespeare's plays about Richard III are an example. Certain type of genres where tragedy was a very popular topic, like Hamlet, King Lear, and Macbeth, were all written by Shakespeare, said to be some of his best work. Obviously, you can see this guy was an overachiever. Comedies were common, but mostly tragedy and dramas, like Romeo and Juliet, the famous love story that is till this day considered to be the best love story. Written also, it's another play by Shakespeare. What a coincidence. Back then, the acting companies worked a little different. They would rarely act the same plays 2 days in a row, whereas nowadays it takes months or years. The clothing or costumes they would wear would be recycled until it was worn out. Then the costumes would be thrown out. The costumes would be used in several plays, which sounds kind of nasty, but that's how it was back then. Drama in theaters became permanent for a while, but then got banned for a while because of the plague. Well, that's all, folks. Oh, and for you writers out there, if you think you can achieve more than Shakespeare, you're out of your mind. Have a good day.
Next, we have Josh Swan talking about popular books during the Renaissance.
Hello, this is Percival reviewing your best books from the Renaissance. Today we're going to take a look at some popular books. The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli, Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare, Utopia by Thomas More. First, let's talk about the bestseller by Niccolo Machiavelli. This book explores the attainment, maintenance, and utilization of political power in the Western world. This book has been analyzed as a way not to rule. The philosophy in the book was centered around realism. Before we get to our next book, we're going to recite a poem by John Donne. No man is an island. Entire of itself, every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a cloud could be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if promontory were, as well as if a manner of thy friends, of thine own word. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind. Therefore, never send to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. This poem came from John Donne's 17th meditation. The poem means no one's self-sufficient. We all need to rely on others to help us. This is a good piece from one great poet of the era. Next, let's talk about the iconic play Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. This tragedy is a hit by about two lovers who can never be together because of their family's feud. This script is masterfully written by the very popular Shakespeare. Shakespeare's iconic sexual innuendo and tragedy can still relate to a modern audience. The characters are great, and this is a real leap in the artistic movement. Last, we're going to talk about Utopia by Thomas More. This fictional story was very different for the time. It takes place on a fictional island where Thomas More explores the different political, philosophical, and social customs. Alright, that's all for now. See you next time on Renaissance Book Reviews.
Thomas Hobbes and John Locke both had contradicting views. We have Hayden Ali talking about both of them and their philosophies.
The Enlightenment was the growth of knowledge and reason among intellectuals. They began to understand and work on philosophy. They used it as a reason to improve the government, economics, and society. Two major philosophers during the Enlightenment period were John Locke and Thomas Hobbes. They had very different philosophies, but despite their differences, both of them influenced society in their own ways. Thomas Hobbes was born in Westport, England in April 1588. At 14, he studied at Oxford. Besides being a philosopher, he was a political scientist, an academic, a historian, and a journalist. He is best known for his political views and his work Leviathan, a book which shows his political and philosophical views. One of his most famous views was the government being there to protect the people from themselves. He also worked on what is known as the social contract theory. It basically stated that one person should not have most or all of the power. John Locke was born in August 1632, also in England. He was a philosopher and a doctor and is still well known today for his views. He was one of the first to use natural law to support his philosophy. He believed everyone had natural rights and the government being limited. He thought the government was there to protect the people, not overpower them. His views were often considered to be a challenge against the king's power. Now we know who John Locke and Thomas Hobbes are, let's talk about their philosophies. Their views towards the state of nature was completely opposite. Hobbes compared the state of nature to the English Revolution. This negative, brutal view of the revolution made him decide that there needed to be a strong king. Considering his view of conflict, this isn't new. Hobbes believed humans cannot live together without being under subjection of a singular high force. Locke, on the other hand, believed that the state of nature was good. He believed that if the government couldn't do as much for the people as they did for themselves in the state of nature, they could be broken up. He understood humans to be naturally peaceful, and it should stay that way. Hobbes' view of humans is nasty and brutal. He thinks humans do not know what is theirs and what is someone else's, and trying to resolve problems will just lead to conflict and violence. He did not trust many people, as common people did not reason well in his mind. Locke thinks that the human mind is like a black slate, and that man is by nature a social animal. Humans do not know what is right and wrong, and can solve conflicts within government among themselves. Their views on government are especially interesting. Hobbes thinks a contract exists between a society and a king, but once the king is a king, he cannot be overthrown and obtains absolute power. On the other hand, Locke thinks government can be overthrown if it doesn't represent the people. In conclusion, Hobbes thinks the world is a lot darker place, as Locke perceives it to be much more equal as Hobbes thinks it is.
So, after talking about who was Thomas Hobbes and John Locke and their philosophies, etc., let's explain why both of them were so important. Thomas Hobbes was an English philosopher, and he was best known for his political thoughts and his writing, including contemporary politics. He faced problems with social and political orders, but however, he tried avoiding danger and fear of a civil conflict. An uncountable sovereign which others awaits us is the state of nature. However, John Locke was one of the most important and influential philosophers ever to live. The French Enlightenment drew heavily on his ideas, as did the founding fathers of the American Revolution.
Coming from learning about how Thomas Hobbes and John Locke's philosophies are different, we'll talk about how they affect the government. Locke fought for peace with all mankind, also that God made all people naturally subject to monarch. He had an argument that people have rights, such as the right to live, liberty, and property. Locke used to claim that men are naturally free and equal. Thomas Hobbes had a theory about social contract which stated, justifying political principles or arrangements by appeal to the agreement that would be among suitably situated, rational, free, and equal persons. He was famous for using the theory to arrive to the astonishing conclusion that we should submit to the authority of absolute, undivided, and unlimited sovereign power, which means there should be a king. So how did Hobbes and Locke create a foundation for the Enlightenment period? Thomas Hobbes and John Locke were a foundation to the Enlightenment period because they wrote about ideas such as the social contract, which says that the idea of government needs to be with the consent of the governed, and philosophies about absolutism, such as Hobbes' theory that all humans are inherently self-driven and evil, and that the best form of the government is thus a single all-powerful monarch. Their debate centered around the same concept of the state of nature. By describing opposing theories, using the same starting point, other philosophers could discuss, debate, and build up the ideas that these two men had created.
Breaking news. There's been a dispute between the scientists and the church about where the sun comes from and why it comes up. The scientists claim that the earth revolves around the sun. The church says the earth is at the center of everything and the sun revolves around it. Two scientists, Nicholas Copernicus and Galileo Galilei, published books that have information that proves the earth revolves around the sun. These books are being banned by the church. The church is putting these two scientists on trial for apparently preaching the Bible is wrong. The church prevents anyone from reading these books. Citizens are wondering why it makes these books so forbidden. Maybe it is because it proves the church is wrong, or maybe it uncovers even more about the dispute. New information about the argument has arrived. The reason there's so much tension between the two is because the church makes people think that they are always right, and they should never question the Bible. If word gets out about the truth, the church will no longer have control over citizens' minds. Anyone seen disobeying the church will be prosecuted to the fullest extent, no questions asked. I suggest to stay away from anyone who breaks these laws and to report them immediately. There's been reports of Copernicus miraculously passing away before he could be put on trial. We will have more information about that coming your way. The scientific method has been around for centuries, but is it really as effective? We have Nick Galvin and Casey Daly reporting on that now.
Welcome to CNN News. I am Nicholas Galvin.
And I am Casey Daly.
Today's topic will be on the scientific method.
We'll be answering some questions from people who are curious to know what the scientific method is and how it works.
Okay, let me see. So our first question is from Hannah from Dallas, Texas. What is the scientific method? Well, Hannah, the scientific method...
I can tell you, Hannah. The scientific method is a method that gives you order to things.
Well, not necessarily. The scientific method consists of a series of steps to help you solve a problem or a conflict. It always works.
It doesn't always work. Not everything works all the time.
Yes, I know that, but what I'm saying is I guarantee that a lot of people who tried using the scientific method, it worked out for them. I would say only a handful of people who didn't really like the scientific method is because it didn't work out for them.
No, way more than a handful of people didn't like the idea of the scientific method. Not because it didn't work out for them, but they believed more in their religion.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, many people relied on God to help solve their problems as opposed to trying out the scientific method.
What if there wasn't a God? They believe in him like myself, but I don't know for a fact if there really is a God.
Well, that's true.
More people have solved their issues from trying out the method than relying on God to do it for them, and we don't even know if he really exists.
How do you know for sure if the scientific method has helped more people than God has, if he really exists?
Well, the funny thing is, I don't know. I mostly said that as an opinion.
What made you think that?
I figured that more people solved their problems using the method because there wasn't as much proof that God helped people solve their problems as opposed to the method. We know the method exists, but we don't know about God.
So what are the steps to using this efficient method I would like to learn?
Well, the first step to using the scientific method is making a hypothesis. And the second step is designing and carrying out experiments to test out that hypothesis. The third step is using instruments to make precise measurements of what occurs during the experiments. And the fourth one is...
Oh, I know that one. It's revising the hypothesis to reflect what the experiments reveal. And I think that's about all the time we have.
Yes, it is. We will see you again tomorrow on CNN to discuss our next topic. Until next time.